Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Smiling Through the Tears. We have a special guest with us tonight, and we're really excited about Marcus, and he's a veteran who has agreed to come and share his experiences while in the military, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to thank you for your willingness to take a trip down memory lane with some memories I'm sure you would rather forget. I want to personally thank you for your service and your courageousness in serving to preserve our freedoms and safety here in America, the greatest country in the world. I don't think people today actually have the respect and understanding of what it means to be in the service today and the sacrifices that are made. But I want you to know that I absolutely appreciate it, and I know the sacrifices and the contribution to serving takes and how important it is that we have people that are willing to do that. And it's one of the most important jobs, yet one of the most overlooked jobs. And so thank you so much for your service. I truly appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we're going to go ahead and get started. First question is, at what age did you decide that you wanted to serve our country?
That's a really hard question because it's not like I started out at 10 years old or 11 years old and said, well, I want to serve in the military.
Right.
I pretty much jumped into the military on a whim.
Okay.
I was working construction and I got laid off. A friend of mine was home on recruiter's assistance and he called me and he said, hey, what are you doing? I want to hang out. I said, oh, nothing. I'm just laid off right now. And he said, well, why don't you come down to the recruiter's office and, because I'm busy, I'm tied up. And I said, well, I'm not joining the Marines. There's no way.
Right.
So about a week later, I was swearing in. and about a month after that, I left for boot camp.
Wow, that's very spontaneous.
Yeah.
So there was no thoughts prior to that ever in your mind that you would want to, or a desire that you had to do that? It just was that spontaneous.
I mean, I had thought about it a couple of times. My family is diehard military.
Uh-huh.
My grandfather was World War II submariner. My dad was Vietnam destroyer. My brother was on an aircraft carrier when Black Hawk Down happened in Somalia. Okay. So I've got an uncle that was in the Air Force as a military police officer. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Both of my grandfathers actually were served. My mom's dad was Army. It was Army Medical Corps back in World War II.
Wow.
And actually his brother was Army Air Corps, which was the Air Force before the Air Force came along.
Wow. So it was destined to be part of your life.
Evidently.
So how old were you when you signed up? Probably not 18, since it was more of a spontaneous thing.
No, I was 19, just turned 19 by a couple of months.
Okay.
So I wasn't super old or anything, but yeah.
And how long did you serve?
I did just a little over 20 years.
Wow. So you did 20 years, and I heard you say earlier you were in the Marines.
I did 4 years in the Marines, and then I switched over to the Air Force and did a little over 16 years in the Air Force.
So there's always a battle between the military branches. So how did that ever happen? Like, are you still like only Marine or Air Force? Are you?
Well, absolutely, positively, once a Marine, always a Marine.
Okay.
Period. Plain and simple. None. Even with me having been 4 years in the Marines and 16 years in the Air Force, I'm a Marine through and through. It's kind of funny because I get asked a lot. First and foremost, a lot of people don't know that you can switch branches.
I didn't know that either.
So that's news to a lot of people. But I've said many times that I did the 4 years in the Marines for the pride and the 16 years in the Air Force for the paycheck. But that's not completely true. It's kind of a joke for me.
Right.
But I'm certainly proud of my time in the Air Force, as much as I am my time in the Marine Corps. The big difference for me was what I did, who I did it with, and where I did it. Mm-hmm. So that's why I tend to revert back more to my Marine time as opposed to my Air Force time, if that makes any sense.
Right, yeah, that makes sense, definitely. So, in your opinion, do you think that every man should at some point serve? Do you think that you gained a lot of manliness in doing that, or
Manliness. I don't know.
That's a good one.
First and foremost, generally speaking, I think that everybody, man and woman, should experience it at least for 2 years, generally speaking. Now, obviously, physical restrictions
Right.
and unfortunately, mental capacity restrictions, all that plays into it. But yes, generally speaking, I think it would be great for a lot of our younger generation to put the boots on and lace them up
yes,
and go to work.
Yeah,
There were several times where people would say something to me, and I'm like, hey, anytime you want to throw a gun belt on and come to work, you're more than welcome to. Come on. Recruiters right down the road.
yes,
So I absolutely do think that. Unfortunately, I think that a lot of today's generation, and when I say generation, today's generation, I'm referring to the 18 to 23, 24-year-olds. That age group today, there is a lot of laziness.
Yep.
There is a ton of entitlement.
absolutely.
And it seems like they just don't care about what's actually going on in this world.
Exactly. That's true.
And in this country especially.
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
I really don't know. I think and I hate to say this because everybody hates this expression, but do we blame the parents? In a way we have to. Now, as parents, and I'm a parent of two, I've parented more than just my two, but as a parent, I believe that we have done almost too good of a job in the fact of giving our children opportunities and material things that we didn't have growing up.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I remember when I was 14 years old, I was paying taxes already. I know my kids weren't.
Right.
They weren't when they were 14. So, hey, Dad, can I have $20 for this? Oh yeah, sure. Here you go.
Yeah.
Instead of, oh well, I need this done in the backyard.
Make 'em earn it, right?
Go earn it.
Yeah, the work ethic in this country has definitely declined with the youth of today. And I would even say kind of maybe up to maybe the 30-year-olds are kind of not able to really cope in this world. There's a lot of people that are having babies now that can't really take care of their children and run a household even. And so it's a really horrible place where we are.
And there again, now on that, you could push that to the whole economy situation, the economic situation that we're in today too, as far as, if you really look at it, people that are making say $50,000 to $60,000 a year as a combined income for that household,
Yes.
that's hard to make it on.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you factor in childcare and all the other added expenses, yeah. So you're depleting the system in a way. Now,
Yeah.
is that those folks' faults? No, not necessarily. That's just inflation, and that's where we're at today.
Right.
So, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with it 100%. And I think that patriotism in the younger generation is dead. And it's very saddening to me because I don't know if it was just I was born that way, like I bleed red, white, and blue, but I've always been extremely patriotic. I have a love for my country, and I don't see that in the youth of today, and it's heartbreaking. And again, maybe it is the parents' fault once again.
Do you think it has anything to do with our schools?
Oh, absolutely. They don't do the Pledge of Allegiance anymore, to my knowledge. I mean, they don't even talk about history. In fact, they're trying to erase the history as we once knew it, and they're actually putting false things into place in the school systems and teaching them things that simply are not true. And as I've had a battle cry, even when I was running for commissioner, and I still today have the same battle cry, is get your kids out of public schools if at all possible. It is an indoctrination is what is happening in the schools today. When I was young, I think it was way different. We got to school, we prayed, we did the Pledge of Allegiance, and I feel like it was pushed a little more on you to love the country and be patriotic. And we did learn things that about the history that I think was what we should have been learning, and that was some of the truths. And today, I just don't see that happening in the schools.
I agree with you, and I slightly disagree.
Okay, good.
So, and the reason I disagree is simply you have to go back to the foundation.
Okay,
And where is the foundation to any child's upbringing?
in the home.
In the home. So, it's very simple. If you go to a high school football game and they play the national anthem, or you are standing on a sidewalk watching a parade go by and the colors go by, what happens?
You're supposed to.
No, what does happen today, not what you're supposed to
Yeah.
do. What happens today is absolutely nothing. Laughing, giggling, carrying on, carrying conversations on, so on and so forth.
Right.
National anthems getting played. You might get 75% of the populace in the stadium to shut up and pay attention. But there's 25% that are still on a rolling roar. Back when I was a kid, if I was standing on that sidewalk or in that stadium and the national anthem was playing or the colors was going past me in a parade, and I didn't take my hat off and I didn't put my hand over my heart, I got cuffed on the back of the head.
By a parent.
Yeah.
Right.
Or of course, back in the 80s, by any adult that was standing by.
Right.
It could be parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle.
Right.
It could be your neighbor's brother, sister's cousin. They're going to smack you.
Right, right.
So you had to, you just did it. It was ingrained in us. It was built in us, in our foundations back
Right.
then. The hustle and bustle, every aspect has changed since then. If you think about it, I was blessed. I had one parent working and one parent was stay at home. That is not a thing anymore.
Nope.
Gender roles are not a thing anymore. So I know we're kind of steering off track of
That's
the
okay.
military
Right.
issues.
Yeah, I know.
However,
That's because of my question.
However, the gender roles aren't a thing. But there again, you asked me earlier, do I believe that every man should serve in the military? I believe that every man and woman should serve in the military. I don't believe that I should come home to a home-cooked meal. I believe that if I get home first, I should have dinner ready for her if she's working late.
And I agree. And when both people are working,
I think
it
it's a
becomes a
partnership,
team
a
effort.
team.
Exactly.
And so now if the wife is home, then I think the man should expect dinner, because that's her job, is to be home taking care of the home.
without a doubt.
But when two parties are working, it's whoever is available and has the time jumps in, do the laundry, do the cooking, do whatever needs to be done.
Yep.
So I
Without
agree
a
with
doubt.
you on that. So
Without a
back to the military, which that was a great discussion, by the way. Do you have any regrets about serving?
Absolutely none. Absolutely none. I don't have a single regret on any of it. Not what branches I chose. Well, I take that back. I would do different career fields, I think.
Okay.
Not that the career fields that I was in was necessarily a bad thing, but I really wish I would have been a helicopter pilot. That was one of the things that I always, after I was in, I was like, damn, I should have done that. That guy looks really cool up there.
I can see myself.
And I'll tell you what, I bet you it's air conditioned in that thing. And it's really hot down here. So I guess if there is a regret, that would be it.
Okay. And I'm sure there was lots of lessons learned, and so we're going to start with the worst. What was the worst lesson that you learned in the military?
Don't volunteer. You never know what you're volunteering for. When that platoon sergeant comes out and says, "Hey, I need 4 guys," and you put your hand up, oh, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
No.
Worst. What does that mean? Like
Worst
what
lesson.
was the hardest thing that he
Hardest
had to go
or-
through,
yeah,
or
I mean, sure.
I mean, that could be any number of things, just as much as the best lesson learned. Could be any number of things. Worst though, For me, it's probably to know the room and just shut up when I need to shut up.
Okay. So you are known to say too much.
Oh, maybe a little.
Okay. 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 What was the best lesson that you learned?
How to function as a team is a big one. And this is going to be a touchy subject, but I'm going to say it anyways. Don't look at people and judge them simply by what you think their background might be, as in race or creed or religion. You don't go off the stereotypes, basically, because I've made many friends. I've worked with many different types of people, and oh my goodness, some of them have been top notch, and some of them have just been absolutely terrible.
Right.
And it would be the complete opposite of what the stereotype might be in your head or whatever.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Okay. So what was boot camp like?
oh, it was super. It was like a vacation.
Yeah.
I was on the hot sunny shores of
nice.
South Carolina. I mean, I never saw that ocean though. I saw a whole lot of swamp when I was there. I did boot camp in Parris Island, South Carolina.
That's where my brother did it.
Every Marine east of the Mississippi goes to Parris Island, South Carolina. Every Marine west of the Mississippi goes to San Diego.
Okay.
We call them Hollywood Marines. They're,
Not as good as the other ones, of course.
they're just there for the show.
Yeah.
But every female Marine actually goes to Parris Island, no matter where they're
Okay.
located geographically. Parris Island is the only.
Is there a
boot
reason for
camp.
that?
There is not as many female Marines, so they just ship them all right to Parris Island instead of having the various different facilities.
Okay.
So, like when I was at Parris Island, I saw the female recruits from a very, very far distance, and it was like once or twice.
Okay.
They keep us very separated. Now, Air Force boot camp, I can't really speak too much about it because I didn't have to go through boot camp for the
Okay.
Air Force, but they're integrated.
Okay.
Like they're going to classes together. They're doing all sorts of things together, and not the Marines.
Okay.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Marine Corps boot camp is very challenging. It is very team oriented. They completely break you down, strip you of everything that you ever knew or loved or whatever, and then they completely rebuild you. Some people will call it brainwashing. I don't necessarily believe that. Every single thing that you are taught has meaning and purpose behind it.
Okay.
Simply, you see the funny memes on Facebook or whatever, where a whole entire squad bay is flipped upside down and the bunk beds are thrown everywhere and the foot lockers are topsy-turvy and there's clothes and sheets and everything. There's a purpose to that. If one individual leaves his little foot locker unlocked, then everybody's going to have everything flipped upside down.
Wow.
Well, if you think about it, if you leave an armory insecure after you get out into the Fleet Marine Force,
You're affecting everybody.
exactly.
Yep.
So you start really learning to not just police yourself,
Exactly.
but
Think
you
about
police
everybody.
everybody else as well. So there is hidden little lessons in everything that you do.
When in boot camp, then at any time, was it so stressful that you did doubt that you made the wrong decision at that point? Or even then you were like, this is what I want?
Anybody that goes through Marine boot camp and comes out and says, I never doubted that, is a bald-faced liar.
Okay. Okay.
Everybody that goes through Marine Corps boot camp at some point in time is like,
What did I do?
ooh, I think I screwed up.
What did I get myself into?
I can't figure out how to get home. And they keep telling me that there's alligators in the swamp that are going to eat me if I try running. So which there are,
Oh,
of course.
jeez.
It's a swamp, but
So how long does boot camp last?
it depends on the branch of service.
Okay.
Now, Marine Corps boot camp is 12, 13 weeks, typically about 13. Navy and Army, last I knew, they are at like 9 weeks, and Air Force is at 6. And I can't remember the Coast Guard.
So basically, when you when you went into the Air Force, you didn't have to redo boot camp because they knew you were already tough as nails because you went through the Marine
So-
boot camp.
So when you transfer branches of service, if you've already been through Marine boot camp, you don't have to go through boot camp to enter into any of the other
That makes
branches.
sense.
If you are in any of the other branches and you are going to become a Marine, you are going through their boot camp. Period,
Yeah.
plain and simple.
Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to be the case.
Let me ask a quick
Go ahead.
question. Your ties to maybe people you know that are in the military or just joined or whatnot, do you think that the boot camp has stayed pretty tough and demanding, or do you think that there's
They
wokeism
softened.
that is creeped in that might cause a different Marine nowadays to come out?
I heard rumors that the Marine Corps boot camp has what's called stress cards. So if the drill instructors are stressing out a recruit too bad, they can just hold this card up and it shuts a drill instructor down. I personally find that pretty hard to believe. But I'm sure that things have softened up because I've known Marines that were in during Vietnam, went through boot camp during Vietnam, and so on and so forth. It was different for me than it was for them, in different ways. So,
Do you think it's good that they softened it, or do you think that it's a bad thing? And then I'll give you my opinion.
6 in one, half dozen in the other. You soften it too much, you soften the soldier or the Marine or the airman or sailor, whatever you want to call them. You make it too hard, and then you don't have anybody that volunteers to go. So you run that fine line. But there again, if you want to be a Marine, you're going to earn it.
Right. I think that you can't soften no matter what, because you got people out there that are really basically could lose their life if they're not trained properly and they're not able to be tough. And so I think that you can't be. I didn't go through it, so I can, I'm from an outsider looking in, but that's my opinion. You don't soften it up.
Well-
And today I have it makes me nervous to think if we did have a draft and the boys today between 18 and 25 were drafted, how would they survive? Because they've all been coddled so much that I just think it'd be very difficult for them to survive. And I don't know what would happen. I mean, they might be able to step up to the plate and do what they need to do, but it does concern me thinking about that.
I've thought that several times myself, but did say our grandfathers have the same thought
That's true.
with my generation going in? Will my father have the same thought with his grandkids possibly going in, and even back further? I remember talking to somebody at one point, and I thanked my dad and my grandfather because at the end of the day, yeah, I did what I did, and that's all fine and dandy. But if the ones before me didn't blaze that trail for me, then I couldn't be where I was.
Right.
I couldn't have gotten through or done, or the knowledge hadn't been there in place from prior generations. It's no different than a caveman inventing the wheel. Well, now we've got tires. So we evolve. Everything evolves naturally, as does the military.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you in one sense that maybe our grandparents may have thought that about us, but I think that we live in a day today, like you said in the beginning of the podcast, where there's entitlement like never before, and that our country has made people feel that they're so important. And of course, you want your kids to know they're special and they're important, but you don't want people to use that as a crutch in their life either, where they're unable to be successful in life because they're so entitled.
Everybody gets a participation trophy.
And that's where the problem started. It truly is.
Right.
So, okay, so what was your most memorable experience? And I'm sure there's many, but just one of the top ones.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my time in combat is going to stand out more than anything. That was when I was in the Marines in 2003. There was a point in time when I was in the Air Force. It was somewhere around, I want to say 2014, 2016, somewhere in there. I actually, and in my time in the Air Force, was served locally. I was right here at Vienna Air Station.
Okay.
Or Youngstown Air Reserve Station. I was out doing a perimeter check, and there was two high school age young ladies walking along the road, and I'm in a marked police car at the time, and the one acted like she was gonna jump. I'm like, wait a minute, something's wrong here. So I flipped my lights, did a U-turn, pulled up. She was suicidal. So fortunately, it just happened to be me, and I was there. We got medics out to her and got her the help that she needed. So I've got several different things, you know,
Yeah.
between that, combat, presidential details. I've been pretty blessed in my career where I've done several things.
So were you actually ever in combat?
I was.
And what was it?
I was in Iraq in 2003. I was slated to go on a training mission out to 29 Palms, California for combined arms exercise. We were supposed to leave, I think it was January 9th from Camp Lejeune or from Cherry Point Air Station out to 29 Palms. While I was home on Christmas leave for 2002 going into 2003, I got recalled off of leave. The day before I got recalled, I found out that my wife was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty cool. The very next day I got recalled. We turned around, hauled tail back down to North Carolina. And instead of leaving January 9th to head west, we headed east. And instead of flying, we were on a ship. It was February 14th, 2003. It was on Valentine's Day. Took a helicopter off the ship and flew into Kuwait, and we sat in Kuwait for about a month and a half. And then right about the time President Bush gave the ultimatum, we woke up that morning and headed north. So March 23rd, 2003 was my very first firefight.
And how long did it last?
It was quite a while. I mean, it wasn't, it went on for days in various different areas of the city. Where I was at and what I did, we were in the thick of it, probably a solid 30 to 45 minutes of nonstop exchanging fire back and forth, mortars and heavy machine guns. You know those cool little helicopter pilots that I mentioned earlier? Yeah, they're my heroes.
Yeah.
I watched them go through the city and take out a few tanks that I didn't have to worry about, so that was pretty nice.
Yeah.
But they got shot at plenty themselves. So yeah, that was pretty extreme. There's, with rules of engagement, there is, you know, the standing is you never shoot at a medical or religious facility until you get shot at from it. And lo and behold, here we get shot at from a hospital, from behind us. We're engaging enemy in front of us, and all of a sudden they open up fire from behind us onto us from the hospital. So shift fire, we get clearance from way higher up to go to the hospital, cleared out the hospital. I remember coming around the corner on the outside of the hospital, literally the corner of the building, and I pulled my M16 up because I carried an M16 with a M203 grenade launcher on it. And I pulled it up as I came around the corner, and I was face to face with the barrel of an Iraqi tank. And instantly,
my
I'm like,
gosh.
uh-oh, like, he's got a bigger gun than me. One of my friendly helicopter pilots had already taken care of that tank, but it didn't register
Right.
that it was pitch black
Right. Well, yeah.
at the time.
Right.
But as craziness would have it, that hospital that we were clearing, was the very first hospital that they took Jessica Lynch to, and they were holding her captive. So I don't know if you guys remember
Yes.
back in that time
I
frame,
do.
Jessica Lynch was one of the very first POWs,
Yes.
very first female POW.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know it when we were clearing it that she had been there. We heard rumors at the time that there had been some soldiers captured, but we didn't know where they were. We knew that they were captured in the vicinity of where we were, but we didn't know where
was
they
the
had
hospital.
been. Yeah,
So had the hospital not fired at you, you probably wouldn't have went in there to get her out, right?
correct. But
Wow.
by the time we went in there, they had already moved her.
Oh, okay.
They moved her to a different hospital. After that, a few days later, we got a tip from an Iraqi citizen that she was being held at another local hospital, and we were dead set, ready to go. Now, I was just a straight-laced infantryman, so not like any special operations or anything of that nature. And when you get a bunch of grunts together, and we always made a joke, if you put a grunt in a room with a bowling ball, it's either going to get broke, stolen, or something else. So if you put a whole bunch of us together, we're going to level that hospital. We're going to go in and get our person, but everybody and everything else is gone. So they basically yanked the leash on us, said, no, you're not doing it. And then they sent the SEALs in, which was probably better off for
Right.
for the population there, because the Iraqis, I don't know, they might need that hospital.
Right.
So, but thankfully she was rescued. And
So you were on the mission, not that rescued her, but you were there while that mission took place.
Correct.
Awesome.
I was pretty local to that. I was at that point in time, I was in Al-Nazariya,
Okay.
which basically was the first firefight of the Iraq War. It was the Fallujah before Fallujah happened. Like, since Fallujah, everybody forgot about Al-Nazariya.
Yeah.
But that was where the original ambush alley was. There was quite a few KIA that happened in Al-Nazariya. There was some of our folks were POWs. It was a very, very active. The main highway running from Kuwait up towards Baghdad ran us right through Al-Nazariya. So that was, the Iraqis tried their hardest to barricade us off there, which it should have been relatively easy for them because the Tigris and Euphrates rivers border that city. Al-Nazariya sits right in between those two rivers.
Okay.
So I was on the south side. Some of my counterparts were on the north side, and we just closed in and
Wow.
crunched them, basically.
So I'm assuming that being in that kind of a environment with those men, you forge very strong friendships and bonds.
Very.
And so during that time, did you see any of your friends that you got killed during combat?
So my unit, my actual unit, my entire battalion, they wrote a book about us, and it's titled "God Saw Them Through."
God saw them through. Hear that, listeners? Get that book and read it.
I believe Glenn Thomas wrote it.
Okay.
The reason that it was written is because not one single individual in my entire battalion was killed.
Wow, that's incredible.
Throughout all the combat. None of us were killed.
And
Now,
no, how about injuries?
oh, we definitely had some casualties. However, in 2001, I did what's called a med float, or a Marine Expeditionary Unit, MU-24, MU-24 is when I was on. When you do that, you're attached to different units.
Okay.
So there was some guys that were attached to us at that point. Got to know them. Of course, you spend 6 months on a ship with somebody, and you've got literally probably 20 guys living in an area as big as this room. You're going to get close with people.
Absolutely.
Some of those folks that were attached to us, they were attached to another unit in 2003. They were our counterparts on the north side of the city. They suffered severe casualties. One of the units up there, I believe, got rendered combat ineffective, so they had to bring reinforcements in for them. And there was a couple of friends of mine that, I had gotten pretty close with in '01 that were attached to that unit, and we lost them. One was taken prisoner for a couple of days, and when he turned up, he had been beaten and killed. And then one just actually he passed away from friendly fire from an Air Force A-10.
Wow.
So he couldn't wave off the close air support in time, and that's what happened.
So do you still keep in contact with some of those people?
I keep in contact with several of them.
That's great. That's so good.
I may even end up going next month. There's a reunion happening, and I might be heading out there for that. So,
Okay.
But yeah, I still keep in touch. It was back in March. My longtime barracks roommate from before I was even married, one of the first guys other than a family member that ever held my firstborn child, who's turning 21 this year. He's been just one of my best friends. We used to drive home together on extended weekends. I stopped down. He lives in Byesville, Ohio,
Okay.
which is right down by Cambridge. I stopped in, had the chance to finally meet his wife of
that's so nice.
15.
Yeah.
I think they've been married 15 years. We stay in touch. We talk all the time, and even though we live only 3 hours away, we're so busy we just
Right.
can't seem to connect. But happen to be in the neighborhood, and I called him ahead of time. I said, "Hey, I'm going to be in town.
Good.
Can we hook up?" He's absolutely. They stopped all plans. We went and grabbed lunch. It was a great time.
Awesome.
So it was
That's
super
so
to catch
good.
up.
So do you ever have flashbacks or bad dreams about anything that you went through or the experiences that you've had?
I actually don't dream about anything, good or bad.
Okay.
If I do, I don't remember it. So
Okay.
I'm one of those people.
Okay.
Flashbacks, I don't really. I don't think that's really a thing for me.
Okay.
I do have PTSD. I'm
You do?
diagnosed PTSD anxiety.
Okay.
I have a tough time with unexpected loud noises.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really strange because some of the people that I know that are diagnosed same as me, whether they know it's coming or not, it doesn't matter. I know one of my guys that I served with in the Air Force, every 4th of July, he goes and hides in his basement. Before any fireworks start, even though he knows it's coming, he just goes and hides in his basement.
So I was going to ask you, does the 4th of July affect you in any way?
I will be the first one to set off a firework. I want to hear all the big booms that you got.
okay.
I will shoot the tannerite. I'll find a quarter stick of dynamite. I don't care.
Okay,
Let's
that's
let her
good.
rip. But like I said, as long as I'm expecting it, I'm good.
Oh, that's good.
If it's something behind me and I wasn't expecting it, if it's out of the blue, I'll be the first one to duck on the floor. But it really affects everybody differently. Something I've learned over the years, when I was in the Air Force, before I was even diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety, I hate to even admit this, but I actually made fun of some people because some airmen were coming back, and me still having it in my head that, Marine, I've been to combat and I've done this, and, I've been on that 2-way rifle range. I got to talking to people, and some of the airmen that were coming back from various different deployments, they would have, say, one mortar drop in their encampment that was, 700 yards away from them. And they're having problems with it.
Yeah.
Well, over the years, and having been a little bit more educated on it since then, I've come to find that different people have a different emotional threshold. They have very different reactions to different things.
Right.
So where I look at something and I'm like, really, that bothers you? It might be like the most traumatic, stressful thing in the world for somebody else.
Right.
So I've always felt bad about, you know,
The ones that you made fun of.
yeah,
Yeah. Well,
So.
sometimes we don't know what we don't know. You know?
exactly, exactly.
So, do you think that since you served, that you have more of a love for the country and appreciation for the freedoms that we have?
Obviously, with my family's background, I've always had a love for the country, and my freedoms. I think since I've served, I hate to say it, but I'm a little bit more entitled. I feel like I'm more entitled to some of our freedoms. I don't want to hear anybody telling me anything about where I can and can't carry a gun.
Exactly.
But I'm not saying that that applies to everybody, and gun control is a topic that we probably don't need to get into
Right. That
this
could be
time
that
around.
could be an hour of conversation.
That could be hours of a conversation. But yeah, I very much love my country, love my freedoms, and there's nothing I wouldn't do. If I got called today and said, hey, you got to come back, I'll just go ahead and pack my bags.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
as long as they don't make me cut my beard, I'm good. I still got the haircut for it.
So let me ask you, what do you think of the disrespect for the country that's happening today?
I think that goes back. I think we pretty much talked about that earlier. That goes back to the lack of morals and so on and so forth. The lack of just a general foundation being instilled in our younger generations coming up now. That foundation's huge. It really is. If you think about it, when you build a house, you could have the greatest roof in the world. If you don't have a foundation that's worth anything underneath it, the roof's going to fall down. So if you don't start with the foundation, if you don't start at home, then your roof doesn't matter.
And your house could be beautiful.
Exactly.
And it could look amazing. But with that foundation, doesn't matter. Same. I feel like that's our country. We have a beautiful, beautiful country.
We do.
But the foundation is definitely cracked severely currently.
The systems, I think, have been put in place to create those cracks and to start to chip away at that country that was built to allow liberty to exist indefinitely, and we see it being torn down. And I agree with what you're saying, Marcus, with the starts in the home. I do think that the people who come against us know that, so their way of breaking that down is a big part of it is in our school systems and dumbing down our youth and getting them to think what's important is not in line with what we've learned, a lot of us, straight from our parents, maybe early on, with what
Without a doubt.
God teaches us.
And I'll be honest too, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but you know, I keep saying that foundation's got to be built, but that's not just on the parents. It isn't. It's you know, the old saying, it takes a tribe. Well, you know, that's your coaches, that's your, you know, and I'm saying coaches at the very, very smallest level, not just high school sports, but your coaches, your teachers, your clergymen, your everything across the board. It's got to start at that young level.
And I think that we also have to get back to where teachers are teaching history. Teachers are not teaching gender. They're not teaching Christianity.
Correct.
They need to stay in their own lane.
Yes.
Like, we
Without
don't
a
need
doubt.
you telling our kids about what you think gays are right or not right, or if you think abortions. That is the parents' responsibility. I don't want teachers talking to my grandkids about any of that. That is not their job. But their job is to teach. Period.
Academics, yeah.
Yep.
And so that's where I think a lot of the problems coming from is their teachers are getting in the parents' lane right now, and the parents better stand up and put a stop to it.
Absolutely.
And the only way they can do that if their voice isn't being heard through the board members, because we have been to the boards, school
board
boards,
meetings, yeah.
and they have zero respect for the parents from the ones that we've gone to around here. They don't care what you have to say.
Everything has been. I say everything. Most things have become so money driven.
Yes.
You know, fiscally. You know, you look at the irresponsibility in some areas, and then people clench up so tight because they see that. Look at right there by home. You've got Vienna Township. Vienna Township is in a fiscal mess right now. So other townships around, all of a sudden, they're going to start clenching up and going, oh, we don't want to be in that situation. But there again, they're clenching up too hard. You know, you still have to spend money on your police and your fire and your roads and everything else. So I think it's just there's too much knee-jerk reaction, and that's across the board. Oh, I hurt your feelings, so now you kick me in the mouth because I said something that wasn't even directed at you. That's a knee-jerk reaction. It's just too over the top. And I think people need to sit back and say, you know what, that doesn't affect me. Well, let it go.
Right. And you made a good point. You said everything comes down to money, and that includes schools and what we're seeing currently in our leadership in Congress and the House. We know that a lot of things are happening. Give them enough money, they're going to vote a certain way.
Absolutely.
And that's why we need to clean house and get new people in there that are going to stand up for what's right, regardless of the consequences, and that are not worried about getting their pockets filled, but they're worried about our country and what's best for the American people. Because, unfortunately, they think that they are our leaders. They're not our we have elected them to do what's right by us, and they're not doing that right now. We're getting lost. It's a taxation without representation is exactly where we are once again, and it needs to end.
We're definitely getting there.
Absolutely. I think we are there. So we just talked about, in closing here, because I know it's gone a little longer, we all agree that we have lost patriotism in this country. And what do you think is a good way to get it back? And do you think it even is possible, or you think we're too far gone?
I don't think that we are too far gone. I think that this our nation is entirely too great for that. I don't care what president's in the office. I don't care who's in Congress, who's in the House. It doesn't matter. From your highest part to your lowest part, our country will never, ever be gone. There's too many people out there that are just like me. I mean, you ask any prior service member, and I don't care if you're talking about a 4-year guy or a 20-year guy or a 30-year guy. I know a guy right now, he is 66 years old. He is a little bit on the heftier side. He's got a bad back, a bad heart, and if you think for 1 minute that man wouldn't jump up and answer the call if it came, you are sadly mistaken. There's too many of us priors out there that are sitting there just kind of waiting.
I think
like,
that's what's really
go
kept
ahead.
us safe all this time.
It's
other
that
nations knowing that.
You're getting into the whole F around and find out phase. It'll happen. It'll happen. It's going to take something drastic, unfortunately, for it to get there. I think the patriotism will come back. And I think it is to an extent, but we're seeing it in different ways than what you and I grew up with, as far as, like I said, the hats coming off and hand over the heart and silence with with national anthem. You're seeing it in podcasts. You're seeing it on social media platforms and so on and so forth. The problem is if people don't want to listen to a podcast, they shut it off. If they don't want to look at it on Facebook, they scroll past it. So it's not really reaching ears or eyes that are seeing it on a regular basis. It's not right up in everybody's face.
Like the local news where they basically CNN, ABC, CBS, ABC, they all literally, the same rhetoric comes from every single channel. It's like a repeat.
I don't think the youth watch those channels.
I don't think they do either. I think the youth are more into podcast, but it's just getting them to listen to the proper ones is what we need to really start doing, is reaching out to get the younger generation on board with listening to the stuff the facts, because a lot of the stuff on the news, the majority of it is plain out lies. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's just lies that we're getting told. So is there anything else that you would like to speak on behalf that I didn't mention, or any more questions you have, Greg?
I think I'm good. I think I enjoyed learning.
Yes, it was very interesting. Thank you so much. And I just want to say really quick that I said something about teachers staying in their lane, but I know a couple teachers that are really good teachers. And there are teachers out there that literally are doing the best that they know to do for the kids and are
Absolutely.
doing a fabulous job. So I don't want to put all of them in the
there's-
same.
And there's parents out there that are doing the absolute best.
Absolutely.
You get the good and the bad and the
Yes.
ugly, and it is what it is. So,
Yes, absolutely.
you know,
so yes.
so kudos and props to everybody that is stepping up to the plate and actually doing the best that they can.
Yes.
Across the board.
Absolutely. So again, thank you, Marcus, so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate your willingness to come on, be vulnerable, share your story, and
Absolutely.
it was very interesting. And I learned a lot of things I didn't know, and we got into a lot of topics that was unexpected, but it was still a great talk, and I enjoyed it very much. And I just want to thank all my listeners for listening. And remember, there's a lot of hurts that we all go through, and we all have problems. And just remember that keep smiling through the tears and that God's always got your back. Thank you for joining and have a great weekend. And also thank you to all the veterans out there, and everybody have a great 4th of July. Stay safe and God bless.